Hello and welcome to Movie Mayhem here at Suspiria Works Cinema, where we watch all the movies. Today, I'm going to review a movie called Triangle from 2009. Watch this one through a streaming service, so I will not be reviewing the media. However, I want to say, sometimes you watch movies that are bad. For example, A Troll 2. It's a terrible movie, but in its own awfulness, it becomes rather entertaining. So in the case of a movie like A Troll 2, I would rate that around a 8.5, strictly based on its humor value. It's not a good movie, but once a movie becomes so bad, it goes back the other way, and then it's fairly entertaining. So, if I do give a movie a extremely low review, it's because I think it's a bad movie for what it is or what it's supposed to be, or even on its basic entertainment value. Triangle was directed by Christopher Smith in 2009. It appears to be his third full-length feature film. I haven't seen his other two. Let's start with the good. You have Melissa George playing character of Jess. Let's start with the good. The movie is pretty. It's well shot. It's well filmed. The acting is pretty good for this type of budget movie. The characters, they act mostly how I would expect them to act. Any faults of their acting I would blame more on the script than the actors. Liam Hemsworth is in this movie, who is the younger brother of Chris Hemsworth, Thor, amongst other roles. He doesn't seem to be the acting prodigy of the bunch. His performance is odd. He likes to walk around the boat saying, hello, hello, hello. Basically, as many ways as you could possibly say the word hello, he endeavors to do this. But other than that, the acting in the movie's fine. I have not seen any of the director's other movies, so I'm not sure if they're all kind of like this, but I need to explain what's happening in the movie, so this is going to be huge spoiler. There's really no way to talk about this movie without spoiling parts of it. The movie starts out with Jess, played by Melissa George, dealing with her son, getting ready to go somewhere. She eventually discovers a note telling her to meet at a boat called Triangle, the title of the film, which she does. Upon arriving there, she acts confused. They get on the boat. People kind of think she's strange. There's a strange subplot with one of the friends wanting to hook up the pilot of the boat with her friend, but this kind of goes nowhere, so I'm not sure if this was an abandoned idea during the writing of the film, making of the film, or whatnot. That character, in fact, disappears, and we never hear from her or see her again, so I don't really understand what the purpose of her was being in the movie at all. They get on the boat and they go out sailing for the day. Everyone thinks Jess is a strange character. At some point, the winds stop and this huge storm comes brushing over, a very Bermuda Triangle type thing. This topples the boat and they're left sitting on a wrecked boat in the middle of the ocean. At this point, a freighter comes cruising by, much like Death Ship, which, oddly enough, this movie's called Ghost Ship, is an alternate title in some countries. So, of course, they get on the boat. They get on the boat, and for some reason, Jess's character is suspicious and feels this sense of deja vu about the boat. The other characters never seem to care that there's this giant coal-powered ship. Everyone might not be a boat aficionado, but it's pretty safe to assume we all know there's no coal-powered smokestack cruise liners running around anymore. But they don't find this strange. They don't find it strange that there's no crew anywhere, that they get on the boat and no one can be found. And this keeps bothering me. I think even at its most basic principle, everyone knows a ship of that size requires a crew. There has to be someone on the boat. You're not going to be walking on a boat in the middle of the ocean and not see a single person. But at any rate, They start walking through the boat, discovering things. At one point, they discover blood written on a mirror saying, "Go to the theater." Now, again, that means get in a lifeboat and leave. But, of course, they go to the theater. And Melissa George's character arrives at a banquet hall, and she finds the Liam Hemsworth character who's bleeding out, and then he attacks her, and she pushes the back of his head, and he dies, which leaves her shaken up. And then she runs to the theater where one of the other characters is shot and bleeding out, and the two characters there accuse her of shooting him because he said that she did, and she, of course, we didn't see her do this, and she claims she didn't. Then someone opens fire on them from above, killing both of the characters. This leaves us with no one left except Jess and the killer. At this point, she's chasing the killer through the boat, or the killer's chasing her, depending on which scene we're in. They end up on top of the boat, and they fight it out. At one point, the killer has the gun aimed down on her. She's on the ground, the killer's above her like this, and this scene really bothered me because Jess has been portrayed as fairly weak all the way through until this point, and all of a sudden, when the killer gets ready to fire the gun, she grabs the shotgun in a very combat-oriented fashion and pulls it for one shot, pulls it for another shot, kicks up and rolls out of the way like she's had some kind of combat training. And that's the only time we see this, of course. Then they fight it out on top of the boat. Eventually, she corners the killer who's got a bag over their head. I mean, if you're paying attention at this point, you're going to realize, at least I did, that the killer is her, because the body frames are the same, and then the killer starts talking, it's the same voice. And the killer's mumbling something, "You have to kill them all, you have to kill them all," knocks the killer off the boat. At this point, she immediately sees their sailboat tipped over with them looking at the boat again. So we've reset the timeline. Now, this could have been an interesting concept, and these time loop movies have been done a lot. Low-budget movies like Primer, excellent example. There's been plenty of big stuff like Back to the Future. Even to some extent more psychologically like a Memento. The problem in this movie is it's not done well, and everything that we see starts giving me more questions than answers. The second loop through, she remembers everything from the first loop. She thinks that she wants to try to change things and stop them, but at the same point, she ends up causing some of the situations. Now, this would be fine if she was locked into a pattern where she had to keep recreating each of these steps. But during the theater scene, she prevents them from being shot by pushing them out of the way and escorting them somewhere else. Now, later on, she goes and wanders off instead of taking them with her for reasons I can't understand. And the other her, there's two of her now on the boat. The one that had the bag over her head and the current one. The other her takes them off somewhere and kills them via knife this time instead of shooting them. So we've seen that there's two possible outcomes already. Now, during this time, the good her, let's call that the good Jess, discovers her locket has been dropped into this well many times. So let's say 50 plus lockets reside down there. So she realizes she's been through this cycle many times, which already brings up way too many questions. If she remembers everything, right now, she remembers doing this once already. Why doesn't she remember all the other times past? And if she doesn't remember all the other times past, why does she only remember one? Huge problem to me. The movie started to bother me at this point. So, at this point, the bad Jess is, after she kills those two characters, the good Jess sees the bad Jess and another Jess, a third Jess, fighting on top of the deck. But this time, the bag-headed Jess wins, killing that Jess and knocking her over, which resets again with the sailboat and them seeing the boat. Okay, so now we've established there's 3 Jesses in continuity at the same time. But one of them gets knocked over, that leaves 2, right? Not the case. At this point also, one of the female characters, when she dies, she's up on a part of the boat where she discovers dozens of her own corpses. So we're led to believe these bodies don't go anywhere, and everything that happens just keeps piling up. Yet, when they come to the boat the 3rd time, there's only 2 Jesses. So we're led to believe that they've been killed and knocked over every time, right? But that still leaves 2. Now here's where everything starts breaking down. She decides she should prevent them from getting on the boat. So as the boat's approaching, instead of going to the thing saying, the loading ramp, and saying, hey, don't get on the boat, it's bad, she does nothing whatsoever. She wanders off and hides for reasons they don't explain. She hides and lets them go through the exact same cycle. And she sees the Liam Hemsworth character get injured again where he's going to die. And she decides she has to kill them all. And by deciding this, she goes and dresses up in the uniform and puts the bag on her head. Why? I guess so they don't see it's her. But again, who cares? It's an endless loop, and obviously something's weird going on. It'd be easier to explain if there were 2 of her. So she puts the bag on her head and proceeds to run around with the shotgun, killing everybody. And at this point, the Jess that got on the boat the 3rd time defeats her, as we saw in the first cycle. Problem is, the bad Jess that we saw in the 2nd cycle, nowhere to be found at all. That Jess never died. That Jess is never seen anywhere. Where did she go? We don't know. So, at this point, she's the bag-headed Jess from the first cycle, but in the 3rd cycle, she gets knocked overboard, wakes up on the beach. She wakes up on the beach, walks out, hitchhikes home, and we're back in time to where the movie began, where she's at home talking with her child. Something ensues, she gets mad at her kid, slaps him, then let's call her the current Jess, goes and kills the Jess in the past, and this is another huge problem with this movie. At this point, she still remembers everything. So she takes her kid and decides she's going to hide the body of the first Jess. Now, in order to hide the body, she puts the body into the trunk of the car and drives. And I'll explain why. But this scene alone makes this movie horrible. It makes no sense. It's stupid. It's illogical. And ruins everything that you could have had, making this suspenseful. Drives the car. She hits a bird. She gets out of the car, for some reason, picks up the bird off the street and throws it down to the ocean. When she throws it down to the ocean, you see dozens of the exact same type of dead bird there, which means this has been repeated tons of times. She remembers this. Then she drives off again. I guess she's going somewhere to dispose of this body. And her kid starts screaming because there's blood on the window from the bird, and she can't drive and runs head on into a truck. Then we see the kid dead, and she's standing there witnessing this wreck, dressed in her clothes again. She seems confused. Some guy walks up and says, and she asks, who is he? He says, I'm just a driver. And then she goes to the dock, and we're back where the movie began. So the idea is here, she was going on this boat trip because she knew she had a chance to repeat things in order to prevent her son from dying. Right? Well, if she remembered all that, why did she get in the car? If you want to have a fun exercise in frustration and futility, I recommend watching this. Try to watch each part. It's so much illogical nonsense and stupidity that it'll just frustrate you. You want to watch something good? Go watch Primer, or even Tony Scott's Deja Vu. Very exciting. Same type of principle, but it kind of makes more sense. Even Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is far better and more logical than this piece of crap. So, Triangle from 2009. I'm going to give this movie a solid 2 out of 10. It gets the 2 points for the nice cinematography. It's got some nice visuals. It just falls flat. It doesn't make any sense. You gotta have, if you want to do a complicated movie like this, you gotta really cover your tracks. You can't leave such gaping plot holes like the car thing. I hope you enjoyed this review of that wonderful film. Go ahead and feel free to like the video, leave comments, subscribe to the channel, suggest anything you want to see us check out here. And until next time, we bid you adieu here at Movie Mayhem.